Julian Rayner, 40, a missing persons investigator following the trail of 3 hikers who vanished off-grid. His last known clue, a journal entry that reads, "They only come when you stop looking at them." Title: Silhouettes in the Fog. The enigma of Hollowbrook. Julian Rayner had been tracking people who vanish for 15 years. Usually there's a reason: a bad relationship, an unpaid debt, a failed mental break. But Hollowbrook, there was no reason. 3 experienced hikers should have gone off radar here. No storms, no threats. Just a voicemail sent at 2:03 a.m. from one of them, whispering, "I can see them through the fog. They're all facing the wrong way." Then silence. He'd driven 6 hours through twisting forest roads. No cell reception. Then the forest parted and the fog began, thick as poured milk. He passed no town sign, no welcome marker, just arrived. Hollowbrook was smaller than expected. 15, maybe 20 homes, a chapel, a general store with no name. People watched him from porches but didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't blink. At the inn, the man at the desk handed Julian a room key before he spoke. "You shouldn't stay past the 3rd night." Julian blinked. "Why?" The man just looked toward the window. The fog was already rolling in. That night, Julian stepped outside after midnight. Not a sound, no wind, no animals, just fog, sliding like something alive through the street. He stood in the silence for a minute. Then he saw it, a silhouette, standing in the road. No face, no motion. Just the shape of a person facing slightly away, then another and another. Lined along the road now, unmoving, all facing away from him. And then, one turned, just a little, enough to hear the crack of its neck as it moved. Julian stepped back, and in perfect unison, all the others turned too. Their heads tilted, like they were trying to hear him breathe. Julian didn't move. The silhouettes didn't either. They stood in the fog, like they'd always been there. Statues made of mist and suggestion, until you looked too long. Then they shifted, not walking, just closer. He blinked, 2 steps nearer. Another blink, closer again. He turned and ran. The fog pulled at his breath, cold, wet, thick. He reached the inn, slammed the door, locked it twice. When he looked back through the window, nothing, just fog, like they'd never been there at all. The next morning, he questioned the innkeeper. "Who are they?" The man didn't answer directly, just slid him an old folded pamphlet. No title. Inside, a single page, handwritten. "If you see them, do not speak. If they turn, do not run. If they disappear, do not celebrate. It only means they've gotten inside." Julian checked local records. There weren't many, but one entry stood out. A census log from 1971. Population 46. Updated, never. He counted houses again. Still around 20. But when he asked locals for names of neighbors, they hesitated, looked confused. Some even laughed, like the question didn't make sense. He stopped a boy on the street. "What's your name?" The boy blinked. "I don't have one yet." That night, Julian walked back to the road. He had to know. He carried a camera this time, set it to record. Low light, no flash, fog thick as ever, and then chose. Movement, dozens of silhouettes closer now, some just feet away, none moving, none facing him. Then, directly in front of the lens, a figure slowly turned to face him, but not its head. Its entire body rotated unnaturally, as if turning inside out. The screen went black. Back inside, Julian played the footage. It glitched for a few seconds, then showed a different view. Inside his room, The timestamp, 5 minutes earlier, the camera had recorded someone standing over his bed while he was gone. One of them, just watching. And the moment he hit pause, he heard it. A soft knock on his window. Julian didn't move. The knock didn't come again, but something in the room had changed. The air was wrong, denser, like someone had been breathing in it a moment too long. The lights hummed even though the bulbs flickered like they were losing power. He opened the curtain. Nothing, just fog, but pressed lightly against the window pane. 5 small fingerprints, barely visible in the condensation. Not his. He needed answers. He returned to the general store the next morning. It wasn't open. It had no hours posted. But the door creaked open with a push. Inside, dust, shelves of old tins, no cashier. Then a voice from the back. "You shouldn't stay after the second night." Julian turned. An old woman stood behind the counter that hadn't been there a moment ago. Her eyes were pale. Not blind, but fog-colored. "You're asking too much," she whispered. They noticed that. He asked her about the hikers. She hesitated, then reached beneath the counter and handed him something. A journal, weathered, mold-edged. "I found this outside the chapel. It wasn't supposed to come back." That night, Julian read it cover to cover. The handwriting matched one of the missing hikers' emergency contact forms. The final entry chilled him. They don't walk like people. They stand, they wait, and the longer you stay, the more you start forgetting what real people move like. We tried to leave. The road didn't. Julian packed his bag. He'd seen enough. He started driving, and driving, and driving. But every mile looked the same. Every turn led back to the same fog. The same broken tree near the same wooden sign. "Welcome to Hollowbrook. Population, no number listed." He pulled over, got out, and down the road through the fog. The silhouettes were waiting again, only now, some of them looked familiar. One wore his jacket, another had his walk. And when one turned, it smiled with his face. Julian didn't move. He couldn't. The one wearing his face, same posture, same scar on the chin, tilted its head slowly. The others mirrored the motion one by one, like falling dominoes. The fog between them began to swirl, not like weather, but like breath caught mid-exhale. Slow, intelligent, watching. He stepped back. They didn't follow. They didn't need to. Because the moment he turned his back to them and faced the woods, they were already there. Julian ran, not toward the car, into the trees. The forest was silent, leaves soft underfoot. But no matter which direction he turned, the fog moved faster, curling ahead of him, closing gaps. And then the worst sound of all. Nothing, no birds, no breath, no heartbeat. He turned in a slow circle and realized he could no longer hear his own footsteps. A clearing opened in front of him. At the center, a small wooden chapel, rotting but upright. He stepped inside and instantly felt like he was underwater. The walls were lined with mirrors, each one cloudy, each one warped. He approached one. His reflection stood still, too still. It didn't blink when he did, didn't breathe, but slowly it smiled, and behind it, in the mirrored chapel's pews, silhouettes, hundreds of them, sitting, watching, all turned slightly away. Julian reached for the mirror, and his reflection reached past it. A hand, pale, finger-jointed wrong, stretching out of the glass toward him. He ran, back into the fog. But now the trees didn't match the map. The roads bent where they hadn't before. He finally stumbled back to town. Only it wasn't town anymore. The buildings were still there, but older, sagging, empty. No inn, no store, just silence and a street full of fog. And himself, dozens of him, standing still in the mist, watching, smiling, tilting their heads just slightly wrong. Julian backed away from the copies of himself, each one standing in a perfect line through the street. Same clothes, same scar, same eyes, but their smiles, they weren't human, too wide, too still, too knowing. He turned and ran, but the fog had closed behind him. He was boxed in, not by streets, not by buildings, by versions of himself, dozens, maybe hundreds, all watching, none blinking. Then he heard the voice, software behind him, no echo. "You're the last piece." He turned and saw nothing, just fog. Then the sound of footsteps behind his own. But when he spun back, there was only his shadow, now moving on its own, separating slowly from his feet, stretching towards the others like it had finally remembered where it belonged. He tried to scream, but no sound came. Instead, a cold breath filled his throat. Not his own. His legs moved, not on command, toward the center of town, toward the chapel. The door was already open. Inside, every pew was filled, not with people, with silhouettes. One by one, they turned their heads toward him, then looked away again, like he wasn't quite ready. He stepped onto the altar platform and found a single mirror. This time, it didn't show his face. It showed the missing hikers, all of them, smiling, standing among the others, watching themselves. A whisper curled behind his ear. "You don't disappear when they take you. You just stop being seen by people who matter. But in here, you're always here." Julian looked into the mirror one last time, then stepped forward. When the next investigator arrived a month later, they found Hollowbrook exactly as expected. Dead-end road, few buildings, foggy, silent, empty. They stayed one night. In the morning, their car was gone. Their voicemail was full of static. And down the road, barely visible in the mist, a line of silhouettes. One of them turned. It was Julian. You've been listening to Haunted Chronicles. If you hear music in the woods, don't follow it. Some legends don't fade. They just wait for someone new to believe in them. Subscribe for more true-feeling horror stories that never stay buried. Like, share, and remember, if you find Ravenwood, you were never supposed to leave. Haunted Chronicles, where every echo might be someone still trapped inside.